Please welcome Abhishek Bhattacharjee.
8 years ago, someone I loved ended their life and forever changed mine. I know that I'm not alone in this room in having experienced this kind of loss. I know that many of you have faced or are facing the devastation of a neurological illness, either directly or through a loved one's pain. Here are the facts. Many millions of individuals in our country suffer the consequences of an injured, impaired, or traumatized brain. We really are facing a mental health and addiction epidemic in this country. I, my students, and my collaborators, Professors Manohar and Khandelwal, are building microprocessors to help address this epidemic. So here's a close-up picture of the microprocessor that we are building, and here in my hand is the physical microprocessor. This chip in it is 1 millimeter squared in dimensions, has over 1 million transistors, each sized at 12 nanometers. Our microprocessors are the core of machines that are surgically embedded under the skull and placed in or around brain tissue. These machines read the activity of biological neurons in the brain, and the microprocessors on these machines decode that activity to infer illness and understand the inner workings of our minds. Let me show you what we can do with neural interfaces that are these machines. So here's a picture of a neural interface surgically implanted by our neurosurgery colleagues at Yale in the brains of individuals who suffer frequent seizures per day despite using pharmacological drugs. Implanted neural interfaces like these can eavesdrop on the electrical signals of the biological neurons, infer the advent of a seizure, and electrically stimulate the brain to mitigate seizure symptoms. Here's a video of an individual who has been paralyzed for decades. Neurosurgeons at Brown and Mass General have surgically implanted a neural interface in her brain to read the electrical activity of biological neurons, and we can, from that, decode how this individual is trying to move their body. By inferring movement intent in this manner, we can relay control signals to prosthetic limbs that can mimic what the individual's limbs would have done. These examples are just the beginning. In the last 10 years, there's been reports that have shown how implanted neural interfaces may partially restore vision to those with visual impairment. They may help treat acute opioid addiction. They may help those suffering from suicidal ideation and a whole lot more. So how do these implants decode disease or the brain's intent? I'm going to answer that question by showing you what the components of an implant actually look like. Sensors on board these implants, which are often in the form of a few millimeter squared grids of electrodes, probe about the top 2 millimeters of the brain's cortical surface. There are many kinds of sensors available. I'm showing you some of them. All of them read the electrical activity of these biological neurons. That electrical activity is then decoded using many advanced signal processing and machine learning methods. And here's where our work comes in. Ultimately, all of those computational methods need to run on digital microprocessors. But brain tissue is extremely sensitive to heat. Just a rise of 1 degree Celsius can damage brain tissue. And so that means that the microprocessors that sit inside our neural interfaces have to operate in an extremely power efficient and cool manner. In fact, they cannot dissipate more than about tens of milliwatts of power. Building microprocessors that operate in milliwatts, this is extremely challenging, especially given that we have to read all the data coming out of about 86 billion neurons in your brain. So if you do the math, that is like reading tens of terabits per second of data. So for comparison, that's more than 1 million times more data than a high-definition Netflix video. And you're not going to be able to rely on Moore's law to save you to get that. Okay? Also for context, video streams in data centers, they run on microprocessors that can afford to dissipate tens of watts. So we really have a lot of ground to cover to achieve our aims. Okay, so how are we going to transcend the demise of Moore's law? Well, for decades, Moore's law meant that we could expect microprocessor performance to double every 18 months, no increase in power. That's not true anymore. So what we've been doing is building hardware chips made up of many tiny accelerators. Okay, all of these accelerators are specialized hardware blocks which allow you to process only a limited set of algorithms. Now, by processing a limited set of algorithms, what you get is a lot of power efficiency. Hardware accelerators normally sacrifice the ability to support many algorithms to get you that power efficiency. But what we have been doing in response is architecting a new class of microprocessors and accelerators. So we build many tiles of specialized hardware. We have a programmable interconnect that sits between them that can be configured in several ways for you to realize that vast assortment of signal processing and machine learning methods that I showed you before. So the chip that we've been building, the one that I held out a little while ago, this thing in my hand, this offers about 10 to 100 times superior performance per watt than anything you can get on the market today. It does it by using extremely specialized hardware. It needs specialized software to run with that hardware, but we're going to be doing that in the next few years. So over the next few years, our goals include widening the capabilities of these chips to support treatment of other diseases beyond the ones we currently support, which currently are restricted to seizure treatment on this device and inferring movement intent in paralyzed individuals. We want to widen those capabilities. Once we do that, we plan to test them out ex vivo in mice and then in vivo in pigs with a goal of getting them adopted for human use. As we pursue these goals, we have to be careful that we engineer responsibly and ethically. As you can imagine, there's a whole host of dilemmas that technologies like these bring about. Yale is well positioned to set the path on how we can think and reason about getting the best of these devices and mitigating some of the dangerous aspects that they may present. These are all high-stakes questions. I think if we answer them effectively, we may be able to alleviate neurological and neuropsychiatric illnesses. We may be able to enable a future where we can treat the extreme pain that compels one to take somebody's life, to take one's own life. Thank you for letting me share a glimpse of that future with you.